I could have your attention. Thank you, thank you. Good evening, welcome to the Stakeholder Region 7 Advisory Committee for Anne Arundel County. It is Tuesday, September 19th. My name is Leo Wilson, I'm the chair. Susanna Mudd, she's the co-chair. Got Patrick, Andrew, and Desiree here from Anne Arundel County. And this is.
Excuse me, could you identify people by first and last name, please? And ask people tonight who are speaking to also identify themselves by first and last name. Thank you.
It'll be reflected in the notes, but moving forward, I'll do that.
The notes don't get posted. The minutes don't either. And the minutes aren't posted.
I'll try and.
And if you listen to a recording, you can't tell who's speaking.
Okay, I'll try and be accommodating this evening. So, Patrick Hughes, Andrew Lazara, and Desiree Williams, thank you. I know about 3 Desirees, so I'm a little confused. My name's Leo Wilson, Anna Mudd, and we're gonna go ahead and get started with our meeting tonight. As I do at all these meetings, I don't normally stand, but because there are so many guests here, I figured I might as well do so. The role of the SAC is outlined in the charter is to play a key supporting and collaborative role by providing input and assistance in examining community challenges and opportunities related to land use, preparation of goals and strategies to implement a regional vision, and recommending changes to zoning. This is our final meeting after what's been, I think, gosh, almost a year and a half of meetings. And we've got a tight agenda tonight. We're going to try and get all through it. As is always the case, the public is welcome to make comment. It looks like we may have a few who are interested in doing so tonight. I'm going to limit the comment to 2 minutes. We're going to be pretty diligent about that because there's a lot of people here. And I'm going to ask people to use judgment. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to say something that's already been said, please raise your hand after the first speaker so that we don't have to take the valuable time of everyone here and hear something twice. It's certainly your right to do so if you feel it's important, but I'm asking you to use your judgment.
Leo, before we get into the public comments, can we do one thing first? We have Kaylee Schultz from the executive's office who would actually like to recognize you all, the committee, really quickly. And I thought maybe let her go first.
Absolutely.
This would be a quick moment, and then we'll get into public comments if we may do that. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
No problem.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kaylee Schultz. I am from the County Executive's Office. I serve 2 roles. I am the Boards and Commissions Coordinator for the County Executive, as well as the Program Manager for the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer of Land Use. I am here tonight to recognize the members of the Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I just want to say thank you for what seems you guys were first appointed November of 2021. So you are pushing almost 2 years. You all have been the rookies in this whole process since the GDP was passed. And the county executive, as well as the administration, appreciate all of your hard work, your countless hours, your diligence, your attendance, your studies, everything that has come to be to this point here. So we have wonderful citations for you all from the county executive. And I just wanted to say thank you. You guys are providing insight on the vision of what is to come of Anne Arundel County. And we are very pleased that you all have served thus far. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the citation quickly, and then you all can get on with the rest of the fun evening you have. So the executive citation reads, the residents of Anne Arundel County, Maryland, salute each everybody's name in recognition of your commitment to Anne Arundel County's Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee planning process. As a member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the region, you have selflessly volunteered your time and expertise to create a vision for a healthy, livable, and vibrant community. We are grateful for your input that will continue to shape our communities for years to come. We commend you for your excellent work and extend to you our most heartfelt appreciation. We extend our best wishes in all of your future endeavors. Thank you for helping to make Anne Arundel County the best place for all. And assigned by the county executive. So I will let Patrick pass these out at a later time, but once again, thank you so much for everything and all the continued work that you've continued to do for the last little bit of duration in your final meeting. Thank you so much.
So, I'm gonna remind everyone that if you don't have a chance to say everything that you wanted to say, or you feel that you want to emphasize it further, you're always welcome to write in. Submit your comments online for those who are here and those who aren't here, and there's instructions on how to do that. It's right on the screen right now, Anne Arundel County Region 7.
Excuse me, could I ask a question about that? On the website, it said if you submit comments in writing, there's no guarantee that they're going to be read. Can you assure us that this committee is going to read those comments and consider those comments?
I don't see why we can't commit to that.
Are you committing to it tonight?
Yes.
This
Yes.
committee will read every comment that's
We'll read the
submitted in
comments that
writing
are submitted
and
in writing
consider it.
and consider those as we make our decisions.
Thank you.
Okay. So, let's see, how should we do this? How about if we start over here and work our way around? Would that be okay? Who over here would like to make a public comment as we get started? And please state your name with your last name so that we know who it is. And it would be helpful if you could write it down on the paper over by the door for us as well.
Yeah, I'll go first, Leo. My name is Phil Dales. I'm from Dales Associates Land Use Law Firm, and I'm here representing Bay Ridge Civic Association tonight. To the RCA, and I think I'm gonna try to help us out on our time tonight and say as much as I can that represents some of the views I've heard from the community members. And if, I'm sure I won't express everybody's views, so there's still gonna be people that wanna add to what I say here, but maybe I can cover a lot of what people are trying to communicate and save some people from having to make long testimony. So generally, the RCA is appreciative of what this committee has recommended, that the Bay Ridge Woods remain in R2 zoning. And these comments are intended to communicate to staff why we would like staff to also recommend the R2 zoning. Just because we're hoping to have the discussion as much as possible now before planning advisory boards, before going to the county council. With that said, the RCA does understand the need for change and updating the natural features land use category and the open space zone from the 2009 comprehensive planning exercise. We understand there's changes to the floodplain. We understand that there needs to be meaning to the natural resources land use category and the open space zoning district. But the solution to go to conservation and parks and open space land use categories includes a very broad parks and open space land use category, with both of those categories being represented by a single zone, open space zoning. So I think one of the most important points to take away from our comments here tonight is that the open space, the privately held open space that provides active and passive recreation, is entirely appropriate for low density residential zoning, like RA, RLD, R1, R2. And those zoning districts should still be a home to those kinds of parcels that provide open space and recreation. So if you've got a community and property owners who are voluntarily keeping their property in an open space condition, in this case, subject to conservation easement, but in others perhaps subject to site plans or other approvals that ensure the open space condition of those parcels, it doesn't follow that those necessarily need to be rezoned. And whatever the policy goals, the paper goals, that benefits that there may be to those policies, there are real world consequences to changing the zoning. And where that's not needed to keep the property in conservation, we ask that staff consider that it's not necessary and, could have a very chilling effect on people who are interested in voluntarily putting their property into open space. And some of the concerns that we've talked about are the diminution in property values, which could lead to a number of consequences down the road. And some challenges to financing that looks to the property zoning as the basis for that financing. Additionally, there are contracts, agreements, and documents that relate to the zoning of these properties to provide rights or restrictions that go way back in time for this historic community in the case of Bay Ridge. So those would be real consequences that aren't really justified by, in our view, the planning goals of recommending a change, a down zone from the R2 zoning to open space. So I would suggest that, either the land use designation and zoning for the property be recommended to be low density residential and R2, or that the lower density residential zones be included as some of the zones that are appropriate to this new open space land use category, where again, privately owned areas for recreation, whether it's active or passive, are entirely appropriate, but those are different than properties that are for public parks. So it's a very broad category, we understand, but it should probably include multiple zoning districts, or that the land use should be amended. So thank you very much for considering that. We hope we'll have a chance to talk more.
Phil, thanks so much. We appreciate your commentary. I think it would be helpful to see for our group who is on the same wavelength as Mr. Dales.
Who's here from BRCA, I think.
Yeah, I think so that represents well the position. Okay, great.
So could you raise your voice? Can everyone raise your voice when you're speaking? It would be helpful.
We'll do our best.
Thank you.
We're expecting this size. So keep your hands up so I can see them if you don't mind. Wow.
All of us.
Yeah. Well, you can't say all of it, because she doesn't have her, but a good number of them.
Excuse me, my name's Dorothy Guy.
It's not your turn yet. It's not your turn yet.
Well, if you take account
not
of the
your
people who
turn
have
yet.
their hands raised
Okay.
and put it on the record.
Okay. If you would like to make sure that we understand where you are, if you could just write your name on the page before you leave, so we can have them all in one spot, that would be very helpful. So we can get some more. Yeah.
There's more paper right here.
Yeah. We'll make arrangements to get that done.
There's enough there.
We can turn them over.
Okay, thanks so much, again, appreciate it. Let's move on to the next person who would like to offer public commentary. I said I'd start over here and work my way around. We'll start with you, Mr. Kraus.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Ted Kraus, owner of parcels on Ridgely Avenue north of Route 50. I'd like to add my thank you to the committee and OPZ staff members that spent so many hours invested in Plan 2040. Each of us has a different vision. Regardless of those differences, all of us care about this community's future. While Plan 2040 initially identified the problems of Ridgely Avenue corridor, mostly the deteriorating housing stock near Route 50, the changes that I sought were not approved. My view is that low-density residential use for the properties nearest Route 50 will be a misuse in 2040. With no changes, the conditions will only be worse then. Now the issues have been deferred to a village overlay. I endorse that approach if it adopts smart growth concepts and is sufficiently flexible to enable future decision makers to achieve their objectives, such as they may determine in the future. A blank canvas would be ideal. For example, restrictions such as building height limits should be fluid enough to reward designs that provide generous open space and public access. The overlay must also consider the corridors in and out of the area using along North Bestgate Road and Ridgely Avenue extending to West Annapolis. Only when those access avenues are resolved, those issues are resolved, will a village overlay be a success. Assemblage, coupled with the economics of scale and commercial use, can solve Ridgely Avenue's problems without measurable adverse impact. I seek to create a legacy project that will be small and yet noteworthy, a credit to the community. I urge the adoption of a village overlay framework that trusts free enterprise and the private sector to achieve community goals.
Great, thank you. So, let's move on. Who else would like to see this any support for that? So, Priscilla's asked me to see if there is anyone else who is in agreement with what Mr. Kraus has said here present this evening and is aligned with his thoughts about that area.
No, no,
I just asked to see your hand. Let's maintain some decorum.
This is to reject his idea.
Understood, understood. I understand what
You
you're
don't
saying.
need to count us, because you didn't count everybody else.
But how are you gonna record it if you don't count us?
Again, you can write it down on the,
Come on, that's not gonna work for
I saw the hands.
everything tonight.
look, I'm gonna ask you to leave if you can't be civil. Okay?
I am being civil, but you are being unrealistic.
You're not following protocol, Robert.
Who else would like to speak from the public? Yes.
My name is Renee Montgomery. Good evening, SAC members and OPZ. I'm providing testimony regarding the proposed downzoning from residential to open space, reference CZR 7A001, the Big Woods property owned by the Bay Ridge Civic Association. First, thank you for your service to our communities and your time to allow testimony. I consider myself an environmentalist, and I understand the situation may be counterintuitive. Our community has been and should continue to care for and preserve the land. An open space zone, according to your website and by definition, is designated to protect land for parks and recreation, and such as floodplains, none of which apply to the majority of land we are referencing today. I'm a longtime Bay Ridge resident. My son is 4th generation Bay Ridge. The 5th generation is growing up there now. We've been there for 100 years. Long after you have all left your positions of public service, our descendants will be left to deal with precarious future zoning interpretations. Clear community control as residential zoning will provide the best protection for the woodlands. Our community initiated and led the charge for preservation through purchase, not the county or the state. The downzoning will cause unintended detrimental consequences. I also share my concern that well over 600 community members commented on this plan online, and all of our comments seem to have been deleted. We feel misled and will continue to pursue all avenues available to us to be heard. Thank you for your time. Renee Montgomery.
Thank you.
My name is Carlene Cassidy. I'm a Bay Ridge resident and live at 25 Upshur Avenue. I oppose the downzoning of Bay Ridge conservation land. The Bay Ridge Civic Association and the community of Bay Ridge is here tonight to request that this committee and the county retain R2 residential zoning for conservation land in Bay Ridge and reject the county's proposal to downzone the land to open space. As you will hear, most of the land shown on the land use and zoning maps provided to the community is collateral for the loan the association used to purchase the land. Downzoning to open space will make our collateral worthless, and it puts the other assets of the association at risk in the event of a default on the loan. Other conservation land in Bay Ridge is owned by individuals who purchased lots from BRCA and placed conservation easements on them. These individual landowners were never served notice of the county's desire to downzone their property, and they have concerns about the legality and the lack of due process of this proposal. You will also hear how this decision is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable. We will explain to you that the county and BRCA reached an agreement on the collateral, and that by downzoning, the county is reneging on its end of the bargain. We tell you how, from the county's very first letter to the community in February of this year, it has never exercised the due care that a zoning change of this magnitude requires. Finally, we will talk about regulatory takings and how the contingent nature of Bay Ridge's subordinated conservation easement preserved the underlying value of the land as residential worth millions of dollars. Thank you for volunteering your time and effort on this comprehensive zoning process. We are deeply appreciative of what you are doing and the opportunity to address you tonight.
Can you speak up, please? We can't hear you.
Yes, I'll do that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Vandekamp. I'm a resident of Bay Ridge and live at 40 Lawrence Avenue. I oppose the downzoning of the Bay Ridge conservation land. As I'm sure you are aware, the formation of this committee is a part of our county executives' well-publicized efforts to allow communities and individual constituents a stronger voice in the future of their communities and the county at large. He has referred to how your committee is, quote, designed to transfer power to residents, end quote. He is a former community organizer, himself an active supporter of Arundel Acting Together, a bipartisan grassroots organization devoted to developing leaders to transform their communities. Unfortunately, our county executive's vision of citizen input and county consideration of this input has fallen far short in this case. Despite several attempts to meet with and discuss the issues that the proposed downzoning of Bay Ridge conservation land creates, the county officers have been unwilling to listen. The county's webpage for comprehensive zoning clearly states that, quote, most of the proposed zoning changes are to align with the adopted land use map, end of quote. In its initial letter to the community, the planning and zoning officer states that the zoning change will be, quote, consistent, end quote, or with, or quote, better aligned, end quote, with the land use map. In fact, from what we could tell, all they want to do is simply match the zoning of the conservation land to the land use map. Period, end of report. They tried to accomplish this single-minded goal. County officials have either ignored the facts surrounding Bay Ridge's conservation efforts or simply failed to do the due diligence required of them in making a decision of this importance. They accomplished nothing more than a mere administrative or ministerial act. They're acting in an arbitrary manner that ignores the facts. Despite the county executive's efforts, planning and zoning's intentions remain clear, and no community effort was really ever needed or wanted. Just make the zoning match the land use.
You're at time.
Thanks for your consideration of Bay Ridge's request.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Williams, and I am a resident of Bay Ridge, live at 11 East Lake Drive. I'm opposed to the downzoning of Bay Ridge conservation land. In February, the county sent a letter to BRCA notifying the community of its desire to downzone our property. In that letter, it referenced a desire for community input and commended us for our extraordinary efforts to conserve the land. The county wrote about the benefits of reduced property taxes and reinforced land protection that downzoning might provide. But of course, none of this was real. We had already had our property taxes reduced to zero upon acquiring the property. A simple check of public tax records would have shown that. More importantly, open space zoning does little for us and is actually a step backwards. Our conservation easements are more restrictive than the zoning category where golf courses and related private facilities, barns, stables, kennels, and playing fields and attendance structures are permitted uses or conditional uses. In contrast, our easements preserves our forests and do not allow any structures or clearing. Then there are the facts that the letter simply omitted. The letter never mentioned that the land was collateral for our loan, or that county and BRCA had reached an agreement that outlined how the land could be used as collateral. Our conservation easements are public record. The county copied our agreements to its waiver file. Apparently, planning and zoning never bothered to actually look into the documents that are readily available for it and that relate to our collateral. Finally, our input was never really wanted by planning and zoning. They seem to have already determined that as a policy, the zoning map must match the land use map. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cameron Arterton. I'm a resident of Bay Ridge and I live at 11 Herndon Avenue. I'm opposed to the downzoning of the Bay Ridge conservation land. It took 2 years for the community to fight the prior landowners to buy the land, preventing the destruction of our forests and the construction of 160 new homes. To do this, we raised $5.5 million, of which 93% came and is coming from Bay Ridge residents. As part of this funding, BRCA obtained a $2,250,000 loan. The property that the county proposes to downzone serves as the collateral for this loan. If there is a default, the lender would go first after the land, and if that was rendered worthless, could then proceed against BRCA's other assets, including our marina, clubhouse, pool, and cash. Upon purchase of the property, BRCA placed 2 conservation easements on the land, one of which is subordinate to our mortgage. In the case of the subordinated easement, that easement could be extinguished in the event of a default and the land subsequently sold and developed. It is important to note that the land under both easements serves as collateral. A foundational part of the collateral is 14 building lots that the county first approved in 1998. In 2002, the county and BRCA partnered to include these lots and other unsubdivided land under a conservation easement that was tailored to be the primary source of collateral for our loan. Today's planning and zoning officials want to walk away from this partnership. By downzoning our property, it could not be developed in any meaningful way to a lender. It becomes worthless as collateral and puts our other assets at risk. This is at risk. This is in stark contrast to earlier officials who worked with us to create a lendable loan structure and supported our efforts. We ask you that you hold the county responsible for its past actions and agreements. Do not downzone this property, which would put VRCA's clubhouse, pool, marina, and cash at financial risk. Thank you.
So I just want everyone to understand what's happening. The SAC has made a recommendation to maintain the R2 for the forest area that everyone here is talking about.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry, Leanne.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll start over. The SAC has already made a recommendation to maintain the R2 in the wooded area. That's our group. Our group is charged with representing what we're hearing from the community to the county. So what you're telling us is redundant. We already know this. We've made a decision based on what you've told us. So I'm just not sure what you're trying to accomplish if we made a decision to vote that way. So we can do this all night long and that's fine, but it just seems somewhat wasteful.
Yeah, what are you trying to accomplish?
So trying to get to a meeting here where we already know and made a decision about what people.
So Leo, I wanna take a point with that.
I understand that.
I
We're
wanna
not
take
planning
2
and
points with that. Planning and zoning is sitting here. They have one last chance to modify the zoning maps again, before it goes to planning advisory board. Second, original map that we had kept the zoning R2. The next round, it was changed back to open space. So I know that the county has capability of making another change. I hear that the committee had an original support, but this is addressing the county as well as SAC.
So what the Bay Ridge group has
Public
decided
testimony.
to do is to take the SAC Region 7 advisory committee meeting and direct all of their commentary.
Not
to
at
the
all.
staff.
This is
Because
just.
we've already
confirming-
made our decision.
Well, we're
made
confirming
our
the
decision.
decision that was made by the
It's already been confirmed by
I-
vote. It's in the record.
We are.
Our group has committed
All I'm
to
saying,
supporting the
Leo,
zoning
can
that
I
you've
finish?
asked for.
Can I finish? We are confirming the vote that was taken, and we are presenting our case one last time so that the county has the opportunity to make any changes they can before we go to planning advisory board.
And with all
We
due
are, well,
due
let me
respect.
finish. We are halfway through our testimony, so about 15 more minutes. and
Leo,
we'll
I
be
can make
done.
a suggestion. Might be a good compromise here. Cindy and Christina are here from staff. They see how many people are here supporting all the sentiments that we prepared.
How many?
I would just suggest that anybody from the RCA who is echoing comments you've heard so far, come up and give your name and abbreviate your comments. We can continue, and I'll continue to provide those comments to staff and to the elected officials. For tonight, I think, the purpose of conveying this to Christina and Cindy and any others from staff here could be accomplished with abbreviated comments if folks can do that.
We have prepared these comments. They are separate and they are distinct, and so we are gonna go through the rest of these comments.
My name is Janet Luby, and I'm a resident of Bay Ridge, and I live at 4 Cushing Avenue. I oppose the downzoning of Bay Ridge conservation land. The arbitrary nature of the county's proposal to downzone conservation land potentially affects other landowners in the county as well. This is a county-wide issue. In developing its county-wide land use map, the county has apparently researched what land is under conservation easement and then classified that property as conservation on the land use map.
Now, in its effort to make the zoning map conform to the land use map, the county is going about and down zoning property to open space. This methodology has the potential to impact other landowners. And in fact, you will hear now how this method has impacted 3 individual neighbors in Bay Ridge. You will see them tonight. In its June 29th position statement to this committee, the Scenic River Lands Trust describes the adverse consequences of this arbitrary decision process. The trust states that each of our conservation easements is different and that the terms of each easement all depends on the property, existing uses, and landowner wishes. The trust goes on to describe how landowners do not necessarily give away all developmental rights, but oftentimes retain rights that open space zoning would eliminate. Thus, it is incumbent on the county to use due care in down zoning land to open space to avoid taking rights from landowners who have been generous enough to individually contribute to the county's conservation goals. Bay Ridge is the perfect example where the county has not performed any due diligence and proposed to render our collateral worthless. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Gonzalez. I'm a resident of Bay Ridge and I live at 15 Herndon Avenue.
I
I'm
have a
also the former
request.
president of the Bay Ridge Civic Association.
Request.
One person at a time. I don't think we can interrupt. the speaker.
I'm speaking on
Just-
behalf,
Just give me a minute.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my wife Judy, Jack and Kathy Flynn, and Larry and Linda Muscatello. The Flynn's and Doug Susie. The Flynn's and Muscatellos are Bay Ridge residents as well. I'd like them to stand during our joint statement. Since we've consolidated 3 statements to one, just give us 2 minutes. We're opposed to the down zoning of Bay Ridge conservation land and the down zoning to open space of our own property. We own lots in the Bay Ridge subdivision that were purchased in 2002 to support the effort to buy the undeveloped land in the community. Larry, Linda, Jack, Kathy, and a prior owner then conserved these lots by putting conservation easements on them. Each of these individuals were major contributors to Bay Ridge's effort, making $37,500 to $50,000 contributions to go to buying the undeveloped land. The land use map provided by the county shows our lots as conservation land. The proposed zoning map provided by the county shows our lots as open space. None of us have received any notice from the county of its intention to downzone our property. In addition, all owners signed a lot merger agreement with the county, which eliminated lot lines, consolidated our lots into 1 lot each. The legal effect is that we now have 1 parcel. Despite this, the county proposes to downzone our old lots that no longer exist. We question the legality of this and are concerned about the effect on our current residential zoning. We also know that there's a 4th owner in Bay Ridge in the same situation, and their lot is different. It's shown as conservation land and open space. So we protest the inconsistent treatment. We want to preserve the value of our property and oppose downzoning of our property. Having been major financial contributors to the effort to preserve Bay Ridge, we support the Bay Ridge Association in its efforts to protect the collateral for the loan, and that we and other neighbors are now diligently paying off. Thank you for your time.
Just gonna pause for a minute here.
I'm not gonna repeat anything anybody else has said.
Excellent. Excellent, that's good. But I'm gonna let Cindy speak for just a minute before you do.
Good evening. My name is Christina Pompa. I'm the Deputy Planning and Zoning Officer overseeing the Planning Division, so I oversee this process. I understand that the Bay Ridge community right now, they have a beef with the recommendation the Office of Planning and Zoning has made. You all have not come and asked us for a meeting. So that we can discuss this. Well, this level of information.
I asked, I sent my phone number, I said I'm available anytime.
So this level of information has not come out before. We are willing to meet with you to hear this information. Right now, this committee who has voted for what you all want, staff are the ones that have not put forward a recommendation. And by the way, we haven't zoned anybody's property because we don't have that power in Anne Arundel County. So this group has forwarded a recommendation that is in your favor.
So my recommendation is that we have a meeting outside of this meeting to discuss the issues and for you all to bring all of the salient information.
So we have 4 more speakers, so we're gonna take 8 more minutes.
You know, Lily, you hijacked this meeting for
I
your own
did not,
purposes.
I did not.
And it's-
This is the public hearing. You show up and you don't listen.
This is
Oh,
public
corporation.
testimony is available.
I understand.
And we have 4 more.
To do what we've already done.
Our group's already done the work.
You've already got the hard too.
Orderly and polite, and you are interrupting us.
So we just finished, we have 4 more speakers at 2 minutes each.
All right,
Okay.
so if you all want to do the 4 more minutes, does that mean you do not want to meet with the office?
No, we
of
absolutely
Justice?
do.
We want to hear everybody.
We asked for it.
Well, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, but okay, but who is the head of zoning, the planning and zoning gonna be there? Is somebody from the county executive's office gonna be there?
She's right.
I mean,
Let's,
I
let's,
can't guarantee you at this very moment who's gonna be there. I can guarantee that I will be there. I'm a deputy, I'm in a number 2 position. I don't know that someone from the county exec's office is gonna be there because the decision-making right now is at this level.
okay, can you explain to us why it is? that-
No, let's just finish our testimony, then we'll set up a meeting with Christina.
Okay, I'm not gonna testify because this is slightly redundant, but I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Why is it that the original document put out by the county shows that our woods were R2? And over 600 people who live in Bay Ridge filed comments, notwithstanding the crappy software that was installed. We beat it down and filed comments anyway. Now, evidently, nobody can even find the comments. Our president was told to file a FOIA request in order to possibly get them. And then what you people did was to change in the next iteration, change from the R2 that was in the original document, which you said you supported, you being the county, to open space with no rationale, nothing stated in public, nobody explaining who made the decision. And when I went and read what you said about you being the county, said about our comments, our 340 comments that we made with regard to your second go round, what you said was that they were merely duplicative and then just sort of dismissively paid no attention to it. I would think that if I were a government official and hundreds of people in my constituency filed comments, that at least they deserve the fact that they're recognizing that there was some passion and interest behind those comments. So you changed your policy twice. You haven't told us why. And I'm probably one of the few people in this room who actually read Plan 2040. And I will tell you that one of the things Plan 2040 alleged was that the process was supposed to be open, collaborative, transparent, and community involved, and that what was going to end up with was going to be something that the community wanted. We're the community, that community, and we've told you over and over and over again what we want, and you don't seem to care. So now, after all of this nonsense, you're offering us a meeting. Why didn't you offer?
I can rescind that. I can rescind that.
That sounds like a threat.
Okay,
I'm happy to meet with you.
okay, we'll get that on the books.
Okay.
So what was your name, sir?
My name is Stephen Buchester. I live at 11 Upshur Avenue, where I have been for since 1984.
thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
My name is Holly Mooring. I'm a resident of Bay Ridge and I live at 61 Decatur Avenue. I'll be short. I'm opposed to the downzoning of Bay Ridge conservation land. By now you are aware that one of Bay Ridge's conservation easements, the subordinated easement, is actually a contingent easement. Its continued existence relies on the lender not declaring a default on the loan. Because of this contingency, Bay Ridge believes that the underlying value of the land as developable residential lots and acreage is preserved. We further believe that in today's market, this land is worth many millions of dollars, as evidenced by the home sales in Bay Ridge currently exceeding $4 million and even $5 million. The county is aware, and this committee should be aware, that when land is rendered worthless through a government zoning decision and the landowner suffers a financial loss, there is a possibility of what is called regulatory taking. Court cases involving regulatory takings are often about downzoning to open space, because open space is a zoning category that removes all other reasonable uses of the property. Under the Fifth Amendment, governments cannot take the land or the use of the land away without compensation to the landowner. Thus, Bay Ridge believes that if its land is downzoned, it is likely that a taking has occurred and that the county will be liable for the millions of dollars in lost value. But as the Scenic Rivers Land Trust has said, this is not just about Bay Ridge. Other landowners have also placed their land under conservation easements and retained development rights. They are also exposed to the county's arbitrary scheme of first changing the land use map to the conservation category and using that change to downzone property to open space. And so we ask that you reject the county's downzoning of our land to avoid this messy and undesirable outcome. Thank you very much for
Good evening, my name is Ellen Piwas and I live at 108 River Drive, and I also oppose the downzoning of Bay Ridge Conservation Land. Tonight, I'd just like to revisit the 2002 collaboration between the county and Bay Ridge to underscore that the county is unreasonably turning its back on the agreement it made with Bay Ridge some 21 years ago. In 1988, the county issued a waiver creating 18 building lots in the undeveloped land in Bay Ridge. In 2002, to help create collateral for our loan, the county amended this waiver stating, quote, "You have indicated that some of the 18 building sites will be sold to facilitate your acquisition. The unsold building sites and the lot set forth in Exhibit B will also be placed under environmental conservation easement subordinate to the deeds of trust required in connection with your financing," unquote. The county then issued building permits on all 18 lots to satisfy the lender that the lots were buildable and had value as collateral. Bay Ridge performed its part of the bargain by placing the lots in a conservation easement that was contingent on there being no default on the loan. Part B, Article 6 of the easement reads in part, quote, "In the event that a default is declared by any secured party, this deed of conservation easement shall become null and void by operation of law, and any and all restrictions, covenants, and other provisions shall cease to have any legal effect. Any and all property rights conveyed by grantor shall immediately be restored to the property." Bay Ridge has acted honorably by placing the land in a subordinated easement and faithfully pays its loan and protects this land. Now, 2 decades later, the county proposes to reverse course and attempt to remove the value of the very collateral it helped to create. Please don't do this. Thank you for your time.
My name's Alex McCreary, I'm a resident of Bay Ridge, and I live in 108 River Drive. In 2000, I was the president of the Civic Association and led the effort to defeat a developer's attempt to circumvent county subdivision regulations, destroy our important forest, and build 160 new houses. Making this happen, Bay Ridge had the support of Governor Paris Glendening, Speaker Mike Bush, County Executive Janet Owens, our County Council Member Barbara Samarizek, the Head of Planning and Zoning Dennis Canada. We're proud of the coalition that we put together to conserve this important natural resource. Today, as you've heard, the county's role, not this committee's role, but the county's role in this effort is in question. We understand that public servants work hard, that there's often not enough time to get everything done. But when the county seeks to dramatically downzone property, residential to open space, it has a responsibility to investigate the details beforehand and not unfairly transfer the burden of making the case to the landowner who may or may not be paying attention. We look forward to working with the county to come to a favorable resolution. We accept your offer of a meeting. We're ready to discuss the matter. We're ready to provide whatever documentation this committee or the county needs to determine that residential zoning should remain undisturbed and our collateral preserved. And we sincerely thank you all. I understand your frustration, Mr. President, but this is important for our community. Obviously, it's our financial issue. It's our private community business. And we need to get this information in front of the county where we feel we have the opportunity to do that. So thank you all very much.
I live at 60 River Drive. I just have a final comment. Many people from as far away as Scotland contributed to the purchase of the big woods with the understanding that doing so the woods would be saved and protected and preserved from development in perpetuity through conservation easements. Open space is not conservation. Open space is meant for public parks and privately owned areas that provide active and passive recreation, including campgrounds, golf courses, bike paths, greenways, tennis courts, and other open spaces. The big woods is none of that. To zone these woods open space is a clear betrayal of all who contributed time and money to the saving of the woods for conservation. Thank you.
Guess I'm gonna have to go. I'm Bill Davidson. I live at 14 Bancroft Avenue in Bay Ridge. Number 4 points. Number one, it's important for the SAC to understand, recognize that BRCA is not just some BRCA is not just some civic association. We're the owner of the land. So, maybe that's redundant, but you can emphasize we're talking to the owner. You've heard the word arbitrary several times. Not going to be redundant. I'm just going to say that look, an essential question that the SAC should be asking itself is whether the change accomplishes a reasonable goal. If it doesn't, then by definition, it's arbitrary. This and the testimony that you've heard demonstrates that the change would accomplish no reasonable goal. Yet the OS overlay would be like a bull in a china shop producing a lot of wine. 2 more points. First of all, about the requirement of law. It's not required. The change is not required. The state law, the land use article simply doesn't require this. In the 2002 GDP, the R2 zoning has been considered consistent with GDP as that term is used in the law. It is not required in order to maintain the character of the land that it should be changed. It's already got the conservation easement on it, which is a lot more restricted, as you've heard, than what the OS envisions would be allowed. Finally, it's not necessary for planning purposes either. I'd like you to think about that carefully. The problem identified in the plan was that the property in the OS zone is no longer in alignment with the historical on the ground conditions. Now that suggests that there's a need to consider the land use zoning for the property currently zoned OS. But it's a step too far to begin to include residential zones in the newly created parks and OC land use category, thereby justifying the rezoning of that property. The newly created OS land use is very broad. And while very different features may be included in the land use category, those features need not and should not always be zoned the same. Thank you. And thank the committee for your public service.
Okay, see how we're doing here.
Hey, can we get to talk when we're not in conveyors?
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to share their position regarding the Bay Ridge zoning? Anyone else?
I just have a quick comment that.
Are you gonna talk about the Bay Ridge zoning
No, I'm
issue?
gonna talk about.
Well, then I'll give you, no, you can do that later. I'm asking you a question, so I understand. I'll call on you. So I want to say thank you to everyone from Bay Ridge who took the time out of their night to make sure that their voice was heard. It's frustrating for us because we feel like we've done what you've asked us to do, which is to make sure that our recommendation is put our on. That being said, I understand and respect your right to offer public testimony in the way that you felt you could do so effectively. So again, thank you for coming. And don't feel compelled to take it. We're not gonna go on that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Recess.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. I never did that.
But they, yeah, but it's in another way. Yeah.
Trying to make sure. Okay, I'd like to call us back to order if I could, please. I'd like to get started again. Okay, let's get started. Let's get back to it. Well, I'm sure. Yeah. Desiree, could you check and make sure that our sign-in sheet is present and we can see it? I saw someone walking out with papers. I want to make sure they weren't lost. Yeah.
And then they say you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yes, Mr. Gay.
Yeah, but there were a number of, signatures that were on that table.
My goodness gracious. Sorry, I just have so much.
Excuse me, no yawning here, please, please.
I'm gonna be tired after that.
I am. For you. Good.
I defended her until it's a bad idea. You know, it just. Why was she with that?
Leo, I went through. Excuse me.
So Patrick, I'm gonna give these to you. These are the lists. These were, there was just a question about whether they wanted to copy these or not. I still want them to leave.
Okay.
So I got them here. And if there's more information anyone wants to add to the list, please do so. There's more paper over there for the remaining guests.
And we got copies of the eggs already. And we got copies of
You can take a picture of it with your phone if you like. If you want a picture of that, stay with me after the meeting. I'll take a picture. You can have the whole list. Okay, great. Okay, let's get started again. First, I appreciate everybody's patience. It was a bit trying, and but as I said to the group, everyone has a right to be heard.
Thank you, Leo.
Just wish it was under different circumstances.
And I would submit that there are ways of speaking. We could all practice different ways of speaking that would be beneficial for listening. I think that's an important thing that this community needs to learn. The folks that I heard tonight, I wish they would speak for the sake of the listener.
Oh, you didn't think the format that we
And yelling behind my head, no, that didn't help me.
Well, that's not.
Sorry, it's not anything to do with how, I'm saying there's a way to speak and a way to be heard.
Well, we did, just so you know, we asked ahead of time, we said there were gonna be 14 speakers and we were
You didn't
hoping for a
ask.
microphone.
I didn't hear that, yeah.
So.
You didn't communicate.
I never heard that either.
You didn't communicate.
I'm gonna try to just get over it.
So let's move on. Let's move back into our public testimony for the remaining few. I apologize for the
Can I
delay.
just make a point of clarification? This is not testimony.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know it's not
I'm
testimony.
speaking to Leo about just a point of clarification. This is not testimony. This is your SAC meeting. It's public comment period if you choose to have one.
Yeah, we're
So
gonna,
that's what I wanted, because I think they thought it was a hearing. And it's not really a hearing. The hearing will be at the PAB and the county council.
right, right,
Just-
yeah. So, thank you for clarifying that in case there was some confusion. So anyone else who would like to offer public comment as we talk about, something other than Bay Ridge, please raise your hand. Okay, we'll start with you.
I don't want it to be the last because, all right.
A lot of people want to do this, just trying to be free.
I want to thank everybody who's worked hard, put a lot of effort in. But I am one of the people who's been really, really concerned from the first time I found out about this, which was only a few days before February 6th.
Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Thank you, I'm sorry. Julie Johnson, P O Box 6634, Annapolis, Maryland. I live on Ridgely Avenue. Ridgely Avenue, and I am just south of the overpass, speaking, addressing the Ridgely Avenue corridor. I have other things, other bones to pick and other objections. Because I am very concerned about, if I understood, Christina Converse, she said that the, traffic, thing for, transportation is across the street from the bowling alley. Well, that's, that's not my understanding of where it is, and it was confusing at the county council meeting, but I may have misunderstood. Points I want to make. Number one, there are people in this county who strongly object to a history of zoning changes. And if you look at the articles, I've since February 6th, I've been trying to read as much as I can to learn and understand about what goes on with this. Since 1950, nationwide, there have been a lot of zoning errors because people were taught the same things in planning and zoning school. And this is not working. People object to it. People object to their communities being changed from the reason that they came there to conditions where they don't want to live there anymore. And this is all across the country. If you look at Cleveland and Detroit and any other large metropolitan area, one of the things they did is and they tried to do it in Baltimore, run the big highways right through the communities with the characteristics that brought people there, kept them there, and they loved it. And then now you want to change it. If you've lived in a community for 50, 60, 70 years, many people have in that Ridgely Avenue section, all it run down and dilapidated is not necessarily here. If you like it, if your dad built it and you want to keep it that way, don't call it dilapidated. And don't demean it and
You're at times. Go ahead.
Give them more time, please. Well, and the point is, you haven't looked at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge study, and you don't know what nothing was said here about the development, which is going to really mess up traffic. It will be incredibly congested. And congestion is one of the big beefs among the people that I talk to about zoning.
Thanks for your comment and thanks for showing up so often. Been here for a while. Appreciate it.
It's only a few times. You need more meetings. You need more opportunity for everybody to speak. I don't want to talk.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do. Who else would like to speak?
Go ahead.
My name is Judy Weigel. You probably have seen me or heard me before. But I tend to say things out because it seems like people don't know what's going on. If you all have your laptops with you, you can Google Landmark Properties, which is Mr. Krause's company, although it's a nationwide company. And what they do is develop student housing, high density residential housing, build to rent properties, and small community villages, which seems to fit right in with what Kate suggested after the meeting. When this committee, I just felt so relieved voted and was unanimous. Unanimous, no changes to zoning on the Ridgely Avenue corridor, no changes. And now the little blurb says, however, I could sleep at night if you took that word out, however. Leave it out, and it should imply to other developers to come in and kick off more property. By the time any of this gets resolved, Mr. Kraus will own all the property. And then what will the county or anybody have to say about anything? Because he'll be able to do what he wants, committee will want. And I'm not saying, that that's evil or whatever, amassing things, whatever, speak to that, good, whatever. And I agree that Bestgate and especially Ridgely Avenue is a traffic death waiting to happen. And this, looking at the corridor, looking at the county, the state road, we need to make something happen, make it safe, you cannot walk. And if the county wanted this area developed, then when the medical centers went in, there should have been sewer and water. And instead, we were downgraded from R15 to R2, and that's what we want. R2 only, nothing else, not small business, not provisional what's it, R2 low density. Thank you.
Thank you.
R2.
Who else would like to speak tonight?
Yes, I'd like to speak. My name is Dorothy Guy. My family owns property on Bestgate Road. I'd like to address the committee and particularly the county this evening. And I would also respectfully request that I be given a little more than 2 minutes, considering the time that we have waited to hear all the comments from the Bay Ridge people this evening. I would like to echo the points that Ms. Weigel just made regarding this idea of keeping Bestgate Road, the Ridgely Avenue corridor as R2, period. No village overlay. The county is inflicting a deceit on the community residents by saying they support R2, but then including a comment that they want to proceed with a village overlay on the Ridgely Avenue corridor. Village overlay means something different from R2. You cannot have it both ways. You have to choose one or the other. What you chose is R2. You need to stick with that and remove the comment for the village overlay, period. And in addition to that, the village overlay concept is in conflict with what is in the Region 2040 plan. The Region 2040 plan talks about conservation, protection, preservation, maintaining R2, concentrating development in areas that are already developed, and revitalizing areas that have slid downward. There are plenty of properties in and around the Annapolis area that need redevelopment, need revitalization. You do not need to come in and destroy a fairly undeveloped area and turn it into a nightmare, like you were doing out here in the Pearl area. Regarding the public comment process, it's basically been a sham. There have been so many issues related to your efforts, the county and the SAC to some degree, in denying the public adequate opportunity to comment. It's rife with meetings that have changed, this complicated GIS system that the Bay Ridge residents mentioned in terms of being able to comment, missing comments, missing zoning applications. Even after you've been notified that the zoning applications aren't on the website, you still didn't post them. Your summary of all the comments you received, woefully inadequate. If that were my summary as a professional I would be disgraced and count myself disgraced. It's terrible.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
You didn't mention most of the comments that were made. Moreover, you didn't respond to any of the comments that were made. Why even take public comment if you're not going to respond to it? Give the public feedback on their comments and tell the public what you're doing in response to those comments.
Okay, we're gonna call time
Woefully
here. We're gonna
inadequate.
call time, right? Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight?
Yeah, I've got written comments from my sister-in-law, who is the property owner on North Bestgate Road,
Your name is?
Leonard Hamilton. So the implementation of the proposed Ridgely Avenue Village Center and the C2 zoning changes, if adopted, would destroy the residential and historic nature of the area. That includes a property listed on the Maryland Register of Historic Properties. Say nothing about environmental impacts and traffic congestion, given the limited access by either North Bestgate or Ridgely Avenue, both narrow two-lane roads. These handful of owners requesting the C2 zoning change have the propensity of changing the entire neighborhood character, either individually or collectively. We've already been forewarned by comments during an SAC meeting when one owner of multiple adjacent properties, i.e. Ted Kraus, of landmark property, broached the subject by mentioning the concept of assemblage. I asked, how can this county or committee allow so few owners to destroy the residential and historic nature of a community in existence since the Williams family settled in the late 1780s? I also asked that Catherine Mahood, who has a connection with landmark property, recuse herself from making any recommendation involving landmark property as either an actual or perceived conflict of interest, will forever remain in the public domain regardless of any vote taken. I asked the county immediately to make all submitted comments available to the public. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
My name's Mary Guy. I'm part of the same group here that has been presenting. I'm gonna make some special points.
Where do you live, Mary?
Bestgate Road. Thank you. OPC and the SAC have done an entirely and woefully inadequate job of summarizing comments received throughout the public participation process on the draft Region 7 plan, whose comment period ended on August 28, 2023. It's obvious that OPC and SAC did not do a serious job of considering the public comments submitted. Many comments submitted on the draft Region 7 plan, and even before that, were totally ignored and left out of the summary. This includes ignored comments about the lack of adequate existing public infrastructure in the Ridgely Avenue corridor, including the lack of public sewer service and an undersized water main that is incompatible and incapable of supporting commercial or higher density residential development, and could not provide adequate water delivery and pressure for domestic and fire hydrant needs. The summary also ignores how a village overlay for Ridgely Avenue contradicts the Region 2040 plan, as you heard before, smart growth principles, county commitments to redevelop and revitalize already developed areas, and OPC's own rejection of the zoning change applications in favor of continued residential 2 or R2 zoning. The summary also ignores many other comments about the environmental, historical, cultural, and socioeconomic impacts that commercial development and denser residential development would bring, and ignores the fact that Anne Arundel County is not growing as a county. What you all have said on the site is totally wrong. And you look at other statistics that the state has put out, and the county is totally unrealistic about residents. The state is losing population, not gaining it. So the list of ignored comments goes on. The OPZ must redo its summary of these comments submitted and conduct a deeper and more thorough analysis of these comments, ensuring that comments submitted have been included. OPC must also understand what it calls duplicative comments were submitted, because its method of allowing comments required comments to be submitted for each zoning change application, and that those comments matter for each application. Furthermore, the OPC must differentiate the comments by area, including separately for the Ridgely Avenue area. And it's not part of Greater Annapolis, it's Ridgely Avenue, it's a county property. It's not Greater Annapolis, it's not city property. And also categorize and better describe the comments made and indicate how many comments of the same or similar nature were made. OPC must also pay attention to and discuss how the draft plans for Third Chesapeake Bay crossing affect the Ridgely Avenue corridor. Transportation planners recently indicated that the Third Bay Bridge crossing will not affect areas south of Ridgely Avenue over the Ridgely Avenue overpass over Route 50, meaning from Route 50 to Weems Creek. That means that the area north of Route 50 will be affected, including Ridgely Avenue from the overpass to Wilson Road. The draft Region 7 plan makes no mention of transportation plans and needs to take the Third Chesapeake Bay Bridge crossing into account. Finally, why should Mr. Kraus and Ms. McGood be allowed to have a private discussion in the foyer while this meeting is being held? She is on the committee, she should have been in the room.
I'm gonna
And I
stop you
tell you,
there.
wait a minute.
I'm gonna
and I
stop
will
you there.
say,
No.
That's an
Your
ethics
time is up.
violation.
Your
Thank
time
you.
is up. Your time is up, but thank you for making comment. So, is there anyone else from the public who wants to offer comment?
Would like to know when will all of the comments that have been
Could you give me a name?
posted? Peggy Hamilton,
Peggy.
605 Westgate Road.
I can't hear your
Westgate
name.
Road. Peggy Hamilton.
Okay, thank you.
When will the comments that were posted online that everyone here has said be responded to? These public sessions where we're voiced, we're giving our opinions on paper, out loud. When are you going to give us answers? And also regarding the Ridgely Avenue corridor, that area is the Weems Creek community. I grew up there. My family's been there for over 100 years. We're a community just like Bay Bridge, just like Highland Beach, but we're just referred to as like a roadway, as a passageway through the neighborhood. We're Weems Creek community, and I'd like that to be respected and referred to that way. Thank you.
So I'm just gonna answer a part of that question. What we're trying to do is provide you an opportunity to share your comments with us so that we can consider them as we make our recommendations. So we're not responding. We're taking them into account as we deliberate about what we think is a good choice for us to make based on what we're hearing from you and what we know about, the zoning backgrounds that some of us have. So you won't get a comment back from us, but we are listening. So thank you for making that comment. Is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak who would like to do so? Yes, sir.
I'm gonna speak something completely different. So.
Name, please.
My name is David Phipps, and I've been involved with the Region 7 Planning Commission for some time on some properties in Edgewater, the peninsula of Edgewater. And I wanted, excuse me. I've been involved with the Region 7 Planning Commission in some properties that are already significantly improved, and the plan is to, I really just wanted to appreciate all of the comments, especially for Patrick and his staff, and working together with me on some issues that have been longstanding and difficult, but we've been able to come up with a plan that is a gradual increase in density from low to residential to more commercial, improve already impervious sites in an environmental manner. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated all your time and effort. And if you had any questions about any of those projects for me, I was here to answer them. That's all. If not, just want to say thank you.
Yay. That's a nice way to end the public comment period.
For sure.
Thank you.
Let's notice.
I make one final comment.
No, I think we've heard enough.
It
We really-
concerns the committee's recommendations. So I would like to request the committee.
So you're gonna give it to us anyway.
Regarding its recommendations regarding the Weems Creek community / Ridgely Avenue corridor, that your recommendation be to keep all of the properties all R2 and also to reject the village overlay concept.
Yes, we understand what you're asking us to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I'm going to close public comment, the public comment portion of our meeting.
And thank you very much.
And thank you.
all. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and sharing your comments, and we're gonna move to the next order of business here. So for us, we get the dust off the agenda here. Yeah, we just finished at 6:30. So approval of the prior meeting notes. There are two sets of meeting notes that were in the record that Patrick sent out to us.
Leo, we have, well, I'm sorry, we do have one attendee virtually who does have their hand raised and.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I just missed that. So please.
I did too. I'm
Yeah,
just not coming to that.
let's go ahead and give him the opportunity. My mistake.
Mrs. Joe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, great. You're on. Your 2 minutes have started.
All right, thank you. So my name is Ruth Jobe. I also have lived on Bestgate Road and represent those properties as one of the co-trustees. So in watching the testimony this evening, I found it very interesting that it seems to me preferential treatment was given to Mr. Kraus to speak earlier in the evening prior to the litany of the Bay Ridge applicants or testimonial speakers. So, and this is not uncommon. And so I think the committee is showing favoritism to him, and it's unacceptable behavior. He has been acquiring properties, as one other speaker noted, and we are very concerned that he does, and on more than one occasion has mentioned assemblage, which is a commercial term. And I'm also very concerned that all the comments were taken down from the website such that someone who would like to read the comments, they're not available. So how is the county being transparent? And I do feel very strongly that those comments need to be posted online for the readers. And in as much as you are able to tell the Bay Ridge residents tonight that you have recommended R2, I would expect that you would do the same, give the same courtesy to us who are very concerned about Ridgely Avenue and Bestgate. Thank you.
So thank you for your comment, and my apology for the oversight. I just didn't see the hands on the screen. So now I'm going to close public comment. This time I mean it. So let's go into the meeting notes. I read through them earlier today and this week, and I mean, I wish my staff wrote meeting notes this strongly. There's 13 pages from our meeting on June 12th, and there were slightly fewer pages from our May 25th meeting. But is there any discussion of the content for the May 25th meeting notes as they were presented to us?
Could someone read the part about the vote on the Ridgely Avenue corridor?
No, we're not. We're done with public comment. Is there a motion to accept or amend the notes?
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor of accepting the notes as drafted? Okay, so that carries.
Excuse me, when will they be posted, please?
And we'll move to the second.
I'm sorry, I didn't
They have to get voted on first, and then we can post that. So that's why they haven't been posted yet, those two.
That meeting is for May. This is
June.
September.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long?
We're done answering questions, okay? There are procedural matters.
Unthinkable.
Procedural matters associated with the review by each of the committee members of the notes, which were voted on earlier. And if you listened to the meetings, you would have heard the reasons for that. So please refrain from making comments. The notes will show up shortly online. Let's move to the June 12th meeting. Again, is there any discussion of adjustments to the notes? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to accept. No motion?
I think there was one of them that I'm in there, both Mr. and Ms.
Is there anything else you want to share?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Then we'll make that adjustment. Can we do that, Andrew? Is that your job?
Yeah, we can make that.
Great, thanks so much. So it looks like, is everyone in agreement? The notes are okay with the exception of that, of the pronoun adjustment? Okay, so with those notes, will go in the record as well after they've been amended. Thank you. Okay, so our next order of business here, is there any other old business, Patrick, that we need to be talking about?
I don't have any.
No, you're good?
Yeah.
Andrew, anything you can think of?
No.
That's all right. Okay, great. So we will move into the summary of feedback on the preliminary draft plan and zoning. Is that this document here?
It is.
Okay, great. So, Patrick, can I turn this over to you to talk about?
Yes. Well,
Unless you have-
Yeah, I'll be talking about this.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Andrew, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So we received 734 responses, through a variety of means, including email, telephone calls, the web tool and internet questionnaires. Yes?
So is this the one that closed August 28th?
Yes, this is the one.
Do
that
you
closed
have a
out.
summary of the one that closed before that?
Yes, that summary is online on the website as well.
Okay, and did we go over that as a committee?
I think we did.
I don't believe so. Okay. I couldn't find it, so
But yeah, we can.
okay, great, thank you.
No worries.
It's not online anywhere,
Oh,
not for the public.
Okay.
So, within the public comment, you see the chart on below, the 734 responses is broken down by community. So you can see for the majority of the comments came from the greater Annapolis community, and Bay Ridge community. Just to kind of, I know the text is a little small, so I'll just read out the numbers. So we have 360 from greater Annapolis, 334 from Bay Ridge, 17 from Annapolis Snack, 11 comments reference multiple communities, and 8 were from Riva, 2 were from Highland Beach, and 1 was from Coral. So out of these public comments, the major themes were broken down by comments on the plan document itself and on the zoning. So to kind of start off with comments on the plan document, there were comments concerning the Ridgely Avenue Village Center overlay. And these comments primarily were concerned with the potential development impacts to stormwater and water quality of the area's waterways, impacts on traffic congestion, loss of green space and tree cover, and potential negative impacts on the historic community along Ridgely Avenue. Many of these concerns were submitted multiple times for different areas along Ridgely Avenue. There were also comments on the boundary of the overlay itself. So in terms of increasing or decreasing the size of the overlay, and also for the need for pedestrian and cycling improvements along the avenue and surrounding community. And in addition to Greater Annapolis, there was also pedestrian and cycling comments for along the Riva and rural communities as well, in terms of the need and a need for increase of those amenities among those communities. And there were also in terms of comments on the draft plan concerns with the overdevelopment and then hence traffic impacts among multiple communities, including the Greater Annapolis community. So that's
Andrew,
so
I
that's-
have a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about the number of responses and some of these concerns.
Sure.
Patrick had a meeting, for instance, out in Heritage Harbor.
Yeah.
Did those
No.
questions and concerns get included in this?
Well, that's not a part of this.
Not
Okay,
not
because-
this town.
Yeah, because I mean, it's part of that same
Mhm.
issues.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want, to make sure that you know that there are more people who have made comment
Yeah.
directly to
Yeah.
Patrick about some of those same issues.
Yeah, no, they weren't in this tally.
This is just about the preliminary draft, the comments that.
Anything that's directly through, but not to you, but through the whole process. Okay.
Right, right.
So the other major theme within the comments made was for zoning. So primarily this was on comprehensive zoning applications, largely among applications with along Ridgely Avenue and Bay Ridge. So starting with Ridgely Avenue, all the comments submitted for comprehensive zoning applications along Ridgely, except for one, were against the owner's zoning request for upzoning to commercial zoning. And among Bay Ridge, there were over 100 comments submitted for each application, each of the 3 applications. And these comments, most of these comments did not support the OPZ recommendation for the Big Woods lots and supported the OPZ recommendation for the pool property and Bay Ridge beachfront. In addition to those comments on the comprehensive zoning applications, there were also comments on Quiet Waters Retreat. So comments were submitted there were against retaining R1 on any portion of the Quiet Waters Retreat, suggesting it should be zoned OS instead. And lastly, there were multiple comments submitted among talking about open space zoning. So in the communities of Annapolis Neck, Bay Ridge, specifically the Bay, Highlands, and Arundel on the Bay areas, and Greater Annapolis, there were multiple comments from residents that wanted to retain OS for those comments.
I'm sorry, would you say just the last part of that?
Yeah, I can repeat that. So in the communities of Annapolis Neck, Bay Ridge, specifically in Bay Highlands and in Arundel on the Bay, and Greater Annapolis, there were multiple comments from residents that wanted to retain OS, open space zoning. So that's kind of like the mostly summary of the major themes. Additionally, we received a number of comments that felt that the online tool, specifically the user friendliness of the tool, was difficult to use. Along with these comments received via that way, we also received calls and emails asking on instructions of how to use the tool and just how to best submit comments as well.
Andrew, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said that a number of individuals commented they wanted to retain open space. Were those properties that had been previously zoned as R2? So it's
not.
Well, some of the ones that are coming to mind for me are areas that were open space zoning, but following this new definition, we were changing those to whatever the surrounding residential zoning was. We've had both cases,
but
and we're gonna talk about a couple tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna go a little more detail.
Okay.
But
because you know why I'm asking. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. A couple of the commenters this evening alluded to like comments being lost or deleted. Like, what, do you know what that was about? Is there?
I'm not sure. We took the tool down after
Okay.
the comment period, but we have all of the.
Right, because I received all of the comments.
Yeah,
So those comments are not.
You all received all of them.
Right, and I noted that they said internal use only, do not share. Is there a legal reason for that? Is there, why aren't those comments available to the public?
They would need to be scrubbed. So some of the comments had some personally identifying
Oh,
information.
gotcha.
So we
Okay.
kind of need to scrub that a bit.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I was
Just
just
to be-
curious.
To go public, so.
And also just because we're the first round, there were a lot of people in our community that did not realize that they had to submit comments a second time. So that was the frustration, I think some of the questions came up because they went back to look at their old comments and there weren't any more, and they didn't realize that they needed to resubmit. So I don't know how to make that clearer, but that was something.
But just to be clear, comments were not deleted, right?
No.
Right, okay.
Right, but people couldn't go back to see the comments that had been made.
So there was this people thought they had been deleted, but they weren't deleted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just weren't able to do.
So it it would be good to be able to retain those so people could go back and see. We had 674 comments on the first round. And a lot of people wanted to go back to see if their comment had been registered. And so they thought, and so there was confusion about the second round.
So does this relate to, there was a comment about somebody had to file for information?
That was me.
Is this
Patrick asked me to file one so I could get the comments.
but that's how it was addressed.
That's how my personal question was addressed. I don't know about anybody
And I
else
will
that did
note
not
that I
have
know
it.
of
No.
at
Yes,
least
speak.
one other person who is told to file a FOIA request.
But
If you continue to interrupt the interaction of this committee, I'm gonna ask you to.
I think it's
You
important
understand?
for you to know.
We have heard you, we understand your point.
Look, you gave all those Bay Ridge people.
Last time I'm
maximum
telling you,
time
then you're gonna
tonight.
have to leave. Last time I'm telling you. Okay,
Are there any other?
so what else do you have for us, Andrew? Anything else you want to tell us about the summary?
That's what I have in summary. Are there any other questions on that?
I think it was well done. Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Very good.
Well done.
Good summary.
That's laughable.
I'm gonna very quickly go through some of, based on some of the input that we got during the preliminary draft plan. I'm gonna, give you a very kind of an overview of big picture, revisions that we're recommending to the draft plan before it goes to the planning advisory board. I'm not gonna do a line by line accounting, of the wordsmithing or graphic changes, but I'll just kind of give you, there's not a lot of substance that we're recommending, changes. Most of the changes are wordsmithing and not substantive. In the introduction, we're going to add a spread on the key recommendation, the key issues and the key recommendations, kind of based on what we've heard and what the plan is therefore recommending. This will kind of highlight a broad overview of how the plan reflects some of those things. Also, one of the comments was to have more in the region plan on its relation to Plan 2040 and other plans. And so we're going to try to add some into that. We will add a little bit into some of the community descriptions, talking about trying to get into some of one of the recommendations was to pull some of the policy area language into some of the community descriptions like Bay Ridge, Highland Beach, and such. Just sequentially, policy areas aren't introduced yet in the document, but we're going to maybe allude to some of that. And there's a correction on the Highland Beach founding that we had that incorrect. Natural environment section will have a bit more details on some of the regulations, protecting existing tree canopy, forest interior dwelling species, living shorelines, as an opportunity statement. So we'll add in something related to that. In the built environment, there's probably a few more changes there. More description from Plan 2040 of the development policy areas. This is a comment that came across a few times. I think some folks don't understand how the region plans and these policy areas carry through from Plan 2040. So we're going to try to make that a little bit more clear. I'll talk a little bit more about Ridgely on the next slide because I do have a graphic. A little more on Forest Drive and its challenges. This will be largely pulled from and referencing the Forest Drive safety study that is recently completed, I believe, right?
Yes.
Completed, yeah.
Can you send that around what you're gonna extract from that safety study?
Yeah,
There are
we
some
can
recommendations that we're very.
If you have specifics, please send them to
Yeah,
us.
okay.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
And just so
There's a-
everyone knows, in our region, there's been 2 pedestrians killed on Forest Drive this year. So. serious.
There's a cultural resources discussion about the new heritage area boundary that they've asked us to bring up, and I think that is something that needs to be reflected in the region plan. In the healthy communities chapter, just a little bit of clarification from a couple of our departments on some of their data and their key needs. And we are going to include, we do need to include a table of the planned land use changes. So we will be, that will be perhaps in an appendix. We'll bring that, but otherwise, there aren't really substantive changes that we're going to recommend changing the direction of the plan or recommendations. But we did get some good input from people, a few corrections. that we do want to have reflected. So that's, oh, and the Ridgely Avenue area, sorry. There were some things that we got some good comments from for this area. We do need to clarify in text that the neighborhood preservation policy area, development policy area, it remains in place. That wasn't clear before. So, and we graphically changed it to use that same symbology to make sure that it's clear the village center is an overlay. There were requests to greatly expand the area of the village center for a couple of reasons. I think some people just thought it should be expanded. Others, I think there was a concern that if you're not within the village center, you're not going to be able to engage in the sector plan process. So we want to clarify that that's not the case, and that, you know, that larger area is kind of that engagement area. And but we may recommend, or we can recommend, that the Dubois Road area, there was a little corner of it that was in the draft plan had been omitted. There's a recommendation to include that to ensure that that paper road or the Dubois Road is you know, considered during that sector plan study. But I do want to clarify too that the boundary can change through the sector plan process, so that can be refined during that process, and I want to make that clear in the text.
So Patrick, if we were to look at the shaded area, the crosshatched area, and go to the left corner, that's up, the upper left corner where there seems to be like almost a bite out of it. Why is it not a regular shape there? Can you tell me what that's about?
This area.
Yeah, that's.
This area, those are fronting on Bestgate, these are fronting on Dubois Road.
I see. So it goes down kind of essentially the back of the properties.
Yeah, it focuses really on, I mean, the way it's drawn now, and we can talk about something else, but it's focused on Ridgely Avenue. It really captures, and it's bookended by the areas that have current zoning, commercial zoning or small business zoning. So that's what's really captured with that alignment.
Great.
So Patrick, so it appears to be that you pulled the boundary and out away from the wetland.
That was in the, yeah, that went out in the prior draft.
Thank you.
My concern is that.
This is a work session.
Doing it.
SAC, I'm sorry.
Most of it's owned by Mr. Kraus already.
Your time to speak is over.
And we do want to strengthen some of the mention of some of the concerns or the special features that we heard through this process. Okay. So we can add that a bit. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, not a lot of significant changes, but that's good.
Bay Ridge Shopping Center area and the possibility of coming up with a study or master planning, which is
there's a specific strategy for that in the built environment I'm not finding it here, but it's to work with the city of Annapolis to develop.
Because there's a lot of people interested in getting involved.
And it's something that we've heard discussed here as well.
Sure.
That area. So
and it ties into Lily's earlier comment about the safety along the roadway there and what the character of that is part of that. Whether it's fast separated roadway that seems like traffic moves versus something maybe a little bit slower.
And I will say I did speak to the city about that, and they're interested, supportive of that as a strategy as well.
Eric?
So,
I know, because we're talking about the concept of coming up with sector studies in Region 7.
What is a sector study?
Yeah, so what else did you have, Patrick?
That was it on the changes that we are, recommending incorporating into the draft plan. So that's it in a nutshell. I think at this point, I guess I would ask, do we have your support to advance this preliminary draft plan with these this overview of changes to the planning advisory board?
To make a motion that we do.
Yes, I did.
Can we just have a little discussion?
Yeah.
Let's,
I didn't
so-
really get on that.
Make a motion, the second thing you have discussion, so we can have discussion now, and then we can vote on it, okay?
Thank you.
That's how it
Thank
rolls.
you. So, great discussion. Walk us through the rest of the process, Patrick.
And
We're gonna advance this time.
October 19th is the date that the planning advisory board will take up this draft plan for this region and the zoning, the recommended zoning changes. They will open public hearing, public comment period. We anticipate that period closing October 27th and November 2nd. We anticipate that to be, the time that they will review the comments that they get through that public hearing process. Deliberate and then make a recommendation. And then we anticipate introduction to county council in January.
Okay, thank you.
And
then,
how the comments come in, the public comment period, is that gonna be another online?
That'll be
interactive
through the planning advisory board process. I think
Go to the meeting?
I think we're
Go-
anticipating.
Yeah, so at the October 19th meeting after the briefing, this is typically what happens. The
Okay.
chair of the PAB will open for public testimony.
Okay,
People can provide oral testimony and or handed
submit.
written testimony.
okay.
They typically will hold the record open for an amount of days.
And we just submit online.
You would email to the planning board secretary.
Okay, got it.
Which that information will be provided in the public notice that goes out for the meeting.
Okay.
and I jumped ahead because let's go back to
That's okay.
to the motion, because I know we wanted to talk about those other changes you were showing.
So, is it okay to ask a question about this slide? The neighborhood preservation policy area, I'm drawing a blank on that.
Well,
I'm sorry to be,
it's
take us backwards here.
no, that's fine. It's defined in Plan 2040. Was existing stable residential communities and natural areas may include local commercial and industrial uses that are not intended for substantial growth or land use change, but may have specific areas targeted for revitalization. Development is limited to infill and redevelopment and must be compatible with the existing neighborhood character. Public infrastructure exists, but they need capacity improvements.
Okay.
For questions, thoughts?
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor of moving forward with the recommendation that's been submitted?
We had a shorthand, man.
You don't want to count mine, you don't have to, but I.
No,
Anyone in opposition?
We do
So
have,
the record's gonna reflect that that's unanimous consent.
yes.
Thank you. That was a vote.
we do have, based,
Thank you. It's still.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I did it right someday. Thank you. It's a vote. And the vote is unanimous. Mine is, yeah. I like the way you tell me now as opposed to how you told me before. So it really makes progress.
We are.
Awesome. Okay, what's next?
I do have, there are 6 areas of where we're recommending a different zoning change. We've gotten some new information through the input that we got during the process. And so I need to share those with you and get your, the committee's input on these.
These were the the document you circulated
Yeah.
earlier
This
this
is,
week.
I
This was
certainly, I'd send this to you all. I'm gonna recommend just, I can very quickly just run through these. If you have questions, I will be glad to answer. This is in the Pearl Town Center. This was really an error. The standout, W1 in front of, 888 Bestgate, should have been included with, application GRA 13. So, we would support, moving that into town center zoning as well. Next slide is, sorry, this one.
Do you want to vote as you go through them or?
Let's do it all.
I'll leave it up to you, Leah.
I think you're gonna.
Okay, sure.
This is, Route 2, east side or west side of Route 2. There was a modification to the request to retain some of the existing C4 zoning here, but there's a specific split that is requested here to allow MC zoning, here.
Is
And
that
so-
where the restaurant, the Yellowfin or something?
Yellowfin is, I think it's down here.
Okay, that neighborhood, okay.
Yeah, so this is a little, that church, the historic church is that parcel there. So that's a part of the application, but there wasn't a change in the request on that application. So it was just, for this area here. And so we are going to recommend supporting, the request. So ultimately C2 zoning north of Sunset Drive, retaining the C4 here and having a specific split of MC zoning in that area there. And it's just a change from the original application. Should I keep going? Okay. This is Liberty Marina. In this area, there was also a change. This was a previous request that there was also a change to bring these properties and include that in the request as well. The request for those would be for C4 zoning and an approximate split. We do have specific meets and bounds, so this is not, don't hold me to that line that I drew very haphazardly here, but a split with the northern portion being C4, the southern portion being MC. And we discussed this a lot internally and recommend supporting that request as it's shown there. There weren't any public comments on this one as well.
East side, west
So-
side? Isn't that the east side?
This is the west side.
Well, doesn't that?
So, yeah. East, yeah.
Okay.
The next one further up the road, if you'll remember, we initially had a request for R10 zoning on these two properties here. They've amended their request to request simply R2 zoning, which is consistent with those surrounding neighborhoods as well.
You know,
We're gonna-
that is the east side of Route 2. She's right. It's is it Route 2?
Did I misspeak? I misspoke when I said that.
No,
This
you
is
said
Route
it.
2 here.
Yeah, so that's the east side.
Did I say west? I'm sorry.
It says west up there, yeah.
North is at the top of the map, east is on the right.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you. I'll correct that, but at any rate, the request is for these to be R2 at this point. We think that's consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. We do recommend also that one be R2, although we've sent a letter to the owner waiting to hear back.
What is it now, Patrick? R1?
R1, right.
Is that parcel developed? Is there a house on it?
Yeah, there's a house in each of those.
They wanted to increase the density. Yeah,
They originally requested R10.
yeah, that's what I thought.
It was a big jump.
Yeah.
Yes. And then if we can look at the next one. This was a request that came from the community of Will Eleanor on the east side of Route 2. This property, the existing zoning had a bit of open space at the waterfront. We had recommended it go to R2, consistent with the neighborhood. That was our initial recommendation. they requested, that it all go to open space because of a conservation, agreement that they have on that property. And so that's new information, and we would support that recommendation for open space. Conversely, the fishing, what's it called? Fishing Creek Farm community. They have about 9 parcels they're platted open space, but there is no conservation easement on those. And so when the original, draft map had been developed, the open space zoning had been applied fully to all of those properties. About half of the properties, have open space zoning currently. So their request was to, go to R1 for the properties on the left side and then R2 on the right side. And because there's not, conservation easement on those properties, that would be consistent with that open space, definition, and we would support that change. So those are the 6. That's it in a nutshell.
So why would those be appropriate as R1 and R2?
There's no conservation easement on those.
So does that mean they would move from an undevelopable property to developable?
They're platted as open space in the Fishing Creek Farms, plats.
The record plat
for that
shows it
area.
as open space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what does the change in the zoning
But it-
accomplish? Is it the same thing that we have at Bay Ridge?
This is a different scenario because there's not an easement on these properties.
Right.
So they
that's
They're not
the
protected
difference.
at all then.
Now they can
Do
build.
they own the properties as
They do.
R2?
They-
Do they
The
own the
HOA
property?
owns them.
And they are listed as R2 on their property titles?
I don't,
So since,
the zoning is mixed on them now. Most of them are split.
since it's an HOA, the original developer set that aside at the time probably, right? Is that how that would have worked?
I don't have a letter with me.
Oh, right,
It's, most of them are platted as open space. One is platted as a recreation area.
So I'm just trying to follow the logic, Patrick, like why is that a good idea?
It's consistent and it's us trying to be consistent and equitable in the way that this open space zoning is applied, following a consistent definition. Go ahead.
Well, I would say based on the plan land use definitions, if we go back to that table 17, page 116 of volume 2 of plans 140, and how the conservation plan land use and the parks and open space plan land use were defined, and those were actually amended at council, so they were very cognizant of what those definitions are. And then matching that up with what those should be zoned, that
Okay.
table kind of, that's a crosswalk of showing you that, and we've left it up to the community associations, if it's platted and not in perpetuity, if they want open space or not.
And if they own the property, they own the property.
There's no conservation.
Correct.
The community's responsibility to get the
Community
conservation
responsibility.
easement.
Right, if they wanted,
chose.
OS that gives a level of protection, if it were ever subdivided, you don't know, between different boards, they sold the property, I mean, they would still have to go through another subdivision to, change that, but it is different than they were.
Yeah.
Probably everyone's different from Bay Ridge.
And what if you didn't do that? What if you kept it open space?
I think there was an error in that, because not that it matters, I don't know how to say anything, I think there was an error in the map. Because one of the community property. owners-
Yeah, we can't accept any more. But I appreciate your.
So the owner is
technical
requesting
question.
this.
Yeah.
But
I'm not involved with that one. But Just knew some information that probably helped.
understood. Okay, what else is there? I think that's
That's
the
it.
last one. right?
Those were the 6.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood a little bit better what was happening with this, so thanks for the clarification.
So at this point, what we'd like to hear is there an SAC recommendation on these 6? If it's the same as OPZ, we can record that. If you have a different recommendation on any of these, we can record that. All of the recommendations from the SAC to date on all of these zoning changes are being recorded, and we'll move forward with the comprehensive zoning map as it moves to planning advisory board and to the council. So it would be important to put a bow on it and get your input on these 6.
Right.
And were there public comments on this one?
The one public comment was, I'm sorry, I didn't include it, but it was the letter from the HOA on this.
So what we need is a motion to accept it.
I just have clarification. Are we using proper school and a motion, or are we using it? I can believe it.
Oh, I don't think consensus is hard. And that's what we decided earlier, it would be consensus.
So you just, somebody makes a proposal that we support.
I'm just trying not have it not be me.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll make a proposal. That we accept the Office of Planning and Zoning's recommendations and on all of these.
Do you need to say that? Or?
No.
It's all,
Been a discussion.
the hand raised,
That's
in
right.
support of it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still, I can't in good conscience say it's okay to make that R1 on this one item.
Okay.
In open space.
So do you have an alternate proposal?
I don't, I mean, we could vote, or we could like discuss consensus with other.
Yeah, but so make an alternate proposal, say that we'll fully support the first 5.
I'm not sure what protective measures there are in the planning process. Maybe you could guide us on that. A way to protect the open space along the waterfront.
So currently it's the platted subdivision. I mean, if they wanted to change that, they would have to go through the subdivision process again.
Okay.
If those happen to be environmental features on those areas, those would be protected through our code regulations.
The critical area.
So
in
you feel
particular.
comfortable that this is already pretty well protected?
Yeah, the critical area applies as an overlay on this coastal area. We're not touching that. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm on board with all 6.
Great, great. So it sounds like we have consensus on moving forward as recommended for all 6 that you've read. Thank you. There you are.
That's all that I have then, because we already went over the last slide and I don't need to revisit that necessarily. So that concludes, I mean, that's all that I had on the agenda for tonight. It was to go over the next steps.
I just want to add one thing for the planning board meeting. Wherever our recommendation and your recommendation differ, that will be noted to the planning board advisory.
I believe it was limited to the discussion where we couldn't reach a consensus on the beach property.
The beach property, you all did not reach consent Bay Ridge Beach, and then the Bay Ridge Forest, you disagreed with the OPZ recommendation on that.
Right.
Yeah, right here from that.
So is there what other, like, is there gonna be any other, reason for us to be involved in this process at all? Like, do we need to come to the plan? Are we gonna be asked to attend planning board meetings or anything like that, or?
We would love for you to follow the process, continue to be involved and offer your support as it moves forward. We will need to work with you, Leo, to develop a letter that
describes just what you did to us.
Yeah.
Make the motion that we adjourn.
I have a question. So what time on the 19th do we,
Oh, what time is the?
and where do they meet and so on?
We'll have to let you know. The public notice hasn't, I don't have that. I'm not sure of the exact time. Andrew, do you? You were the
I
one that
think-
scheduled it.
I think we'll-
5 to
Yeah.
10. That's what it says on. Yeah. But 5 to 10. is
5 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe 6. It probably starts at 6. It's just We,
Typically 6 to 8:30, but
And what location?
pencil that in.
Where?
This one will be here.
This
It's not gonna be this location?
It's gotta be in a big location.
Jesse was, scheduling it, and I think that was, is gonna be, I
yeah,
think that one's gonna be at, it should still confirm the Annapolis Senior Center.
seniors, the Annapolis seniors.
Annapolis
We
Senior
have to
Center.
have a space large enough. You saw the crowd that came tonight. If that's, that's.
The heritage, Bates. Right, at Bates.
Well, you'll let us know.
Yes, there'll be a
Yeah,
public
more
notice and
specific.
then, and Patrick can follow up with email once we have the public notice.
And then when it goes to the council in January, you want us to,
So I can talk a little bit about the council schedule, because I'm there visiting with them right now on a couple different pieces of legislation. Generally, whenever the council introduces legislation, the first public hearing is not for a month. Depending on the date when it gets introduced, there may be a work session before the first public hearing. But we are not sure of the calendar yet. We're not sure how this is all gonna lay out. And it also depends whether you go in at the first meeting of the month or the second meeting of the month. But we can certainly provide you some additional information. The council bills stay alive for 95 days. It means they basically have 3 months. The bill is generally held for the first month. It doesn't go to public hearings, so there are 4 opportunities that the council can amend. Zoning will be a separate bill from the plan. And I think a lot of action will be over on the zoning side for most of the regions.
and all 3 will go at the same time.
Not region 4 is a bigger region. It has more applications for zoning. They may be slightly behind 2 and 7. But 7 and 2 will probably go in around the same time. The other thing is the way the council managed calendar works is that they deal with the budget starting in May. The budget has to be adopted by the middle of June. We don't want to overlap the region plans and the comprehensive zoning with budget because it's too heavy a lift to have all of that going at the same time. So we really need to have the bills in no later than February.
Do these bills go in under the county executive, or they go in, is
They're
there
gonna
a
go
council
in-
member that sponsors them?
No, they're gonna go in, the county executive will ask the chair, whoever that is, because it'll be January, we'll have a different chair in January. The county executive will ask the chair to submit them.
But as is right now, this is our last meeting.
Yes.
Do you want another meeting, Tony?
No.
I do wanna,
I think you've done a very good job. I want to compliment you on everything you've done and just make everyone aware, it's just sitting in the audience that no comment can be made right now. See your hand now, but that's out of order. That's why I made the motion to adjourn.
It's not a comment, it's a question I have.
You're after the meeting, man.
No, I would like it on the record.
No, it can't be on the record because you're out of order. And I
Well,
think
if
Mr.
you
Wilson
had let
explained
me
that to you.
speak earlier, I would have been in order. And I'd like to ask that the deputy director hold a meeting with the Reed Creek.
So
community
Patrick, I think I'm gonna make a
residents.
motion for us to adjourn.
okay.
I made a motion.
But I want to say how much I appreciate you too, Desiree and Patrick, you've done.
We got through this and we really appreciate your input and your guidance through all of this. So thank you, each of you.
Yeah, thank you.
We still want a meeting with our community.
Second, I'll second the adjournment.
You don't need a motion.
Yeah, I just say we're adjourned.
And I want to thank Leo.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Raise your voice.
You know, we're
Yeah.